Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Raw Life Health Show. I am out here in my garden, and it is cold here in South Florida. It might not be as cold as it is in other parts of the country, but it's gotten down to 40 degrees. So that's cold for us because we're used to it being much cooler outside, or much warmer outside. But you do the best you can do. All I know is when the weather's this cold, people ask me, how do you eat raw food in a cold climate? When I lived in New York, I ate raw food in New York City, which is a pretty cold climate in the wintertime. And your body will adapt to where you are. So, like people here down south, they're not used to the cold weather. Some people, in maybe where it doesn't snow, they're not used to snow. Where it doesn't rain a lot, they might not be prepared for rain. So, you kind of adapt to your environment in terms of what you do. If you grew up in a cold environment, you pretty much know how to deal with the cold weather. You know how to get your car ready. You know some things that people that never been in cold weather know. Well, it's the same thing with the food you eat. You know, the longer you're somewhere in a particular environment, the more you get used to where you are, and your body will adapt to the environment it's in. So, I am not liking cold weather, but I still have the memory of growing up with cold weather, and I know how to do some things as opposed to somebody that never did. But when it comes to the fruit and the fruit trees and the way I eat and eating my raw food diet, I'm not going to eat warm foods in the winter time. You know, people always say, how can you get through the winter without eating warm food? Well, I say, well, how do you get through the summer while you're eating, steaming, and cooking your food? If you want to go on that thought, why don't you just eat all raw all summer? So I'm not going to eat cooked food or warm food just because it's cold outside. I think if it's cold outside, it might be better to generate heat by eating more concentrated foods, meaning if it's really super cold, watermelons might not be the best food at that moment. The more concentrated food, maybe the nuts, maybe a few recipes, that might generate some heat to a degree, or the more fatty foods as opposed to the more water-rich summer foods. But normally, stuff that grows local it goes along with the season where you're in. So if you live up north, you might get some apples in the wintertime, but for the most part, it's root vegetables, and you have to cook root vegetables and so on. But if you're down here, down south in the summertime, it's mostly juicy fruits. And in the wintertime, it might be some more concentrated fruits. And then there's essential states and so on. But uh, nature's pretty good at producing in its season what's available. So somebody says, well, if I live up north, I can never eat fruits, bananas, or something in the tropics. I can never eat bananas or anything else. Thanks to transportation and indoor heating, we can make some adjustments to that. So, I don't think it's ideal, but you could eat fruits in the winter time if you're up north. But ideally, you got to think if the food isn't surviving up north, you got to think about your body and the food that we were made to thrive on. And up north or in a cold climate is not the ideal place to be for good health, for the best health. This is why I moved to the tropics. If the food that's best for me is thriving in the tropics, I'm thinking this is the best environment for me as my body to thrive in the tropics. So it's just things to consider. People think they don't have an opportunity to move or a choice to move. You'd be quite surprised. Some of you do have opportunities to move. You just let them pass by. But we do a great job at mimicking our environment. It's almost like when you get a fish tank or you got a garden, you try to mimic the environment that it grows best in. And if that's what you have to do to survive, okay. But remember, there's a difference between surviving and thriving, and nothing will do as ideal as it would as in its true environment. The same thing goes with the food we eat. The food we were designed to eat is always going to be the best food for our body, and that's raw vegan food. Fruits, vegetables are the ideal foods for the body and the way we're designed to eat. Just because you can get away with doing something doesn't mean it's ideal for you. Remember that when it comes to what we can eat. We could really abuse our body big time and still come out somewhat okay. But it comes down to being surviving and thriving. And what I've found is being in a tropical environment, eating tropical food is the best, at least for my body. And if you can't put yourself in that situation, do the best you can do where you're at. But it's cold out here, but I'm not going to eat soup or some other type of cooked food. I'm sticking to my raw food diet. It's not just about the coldness and the cooked food, it's also about the cravings. I mean, I haven't had cooked food in a long time, so if I just eat maybe a spoonful of rice or some soup, I might. I mean, I would think after this long that I won't cave into the taste and sensations of remembering childhood memories of cooked food. But I don't want to take a chance. I have no desire for the cooked food, and I don't want to create a desire. So I'm going to stick to what's keeping me happy, even though it's cold outside. Uh, that's what I'm going to do. On that same note, we could talk about refrigeration of food. Sometimes we have to refrigerate our food. We might not have a choice if we want to preserve it and not waste it and throw it in the garbage and all this stuff. But ideally, if you're growing your own food and, refrigeration is not the best thing for your health. It might be the best thing to preserve food and save money, but health-wise, it's usually not the best thing. Eating leftovers, you know, might make financial sense, but it's not necessarily the best health sense thing to do. Ideally, we want to pick food out of the garden or off the tree and eat it as soon as possible. So I hope that tidbit helped you. And for anyone that was wondering if I'm going to eat cooked food in a cold weather, no, no, and no. For your comments or questions below, let me know how you're dealing with the cold weather. All right, everybody, have a great day and a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.